everyone! This week we're creating crepe paper tulips. I'll be using these 4 colors of crepe paper for this, and I got all of these at papermart.com. Next you'll need some floral stem wire. I'm using 18 gauge, but I would recommend using something bigger like 16 gauge if you can, and you'll also need some light green floral tape. Now I normally use hot glue for paper flowers, but I had heard tacky glue works well, so I decided to try it for this project and it worked great. Finally, I'll be using a small terracotta flower pot that I got at Walmart, and this piece of floral foam, which will go inside the flower pot to hold the stems in place. So I'm going to start by pushing this into the flower pot. You may need to use a knife to cut off some of it to get it to fit, but mine was just small enough that it could fit if I pushed it down inside. Next, I'm taking some black Spanish moss that I got from Joann's, and I'll be using this to cover up the foam block and fill in the top of the flower pot. So I'm just using some hot glue to attach it to the foam block. And definitely be careful as you're doing this because it's easy to burn yourself. So I'm just going to keep doing that until it's completely covered and it looked like this, and I trimmed off any little pieces that were sticking up. Next I'm going to cut a piece of the yellow green crepe paper that's this size. It doesn't have to be exact, just needs to be a long rectangle like that. Then I put some tacky glue on the end of the floral stem wire and I just started wrapping it up. If you can, make it a little looser on the top and tighter on the bottom, and you can put some tacky glue there on the bottom of the paper so it will stay in place. If you want, you can twist it up towards the bottom so it's even tighter against the wire and then looser at the top. And it ended up looking like this. Next, I cut an even thinner rectangle of yellow crepe paper. All this needs to do is wrap around the wire one time, so just measure it. And then once you're happy with the width, you can just go through and divide it into 6 sections, cutting it about halfway down. So it looks like this. Next, we're going to be putting some tacky glue on that lower part, and then just wrapping that around the wire. Then go through and bend those little pieces backwards, just so they aren't right up against the wire. And it looks like that. Next, you'll need to create a pattern that we'll be using for all of the petals. So I just took some scrap paper and I drew out this shape. You can of course make yours a little different, but it needs to get really narrow at the bottom. You can also fold the paper in half and draw half of it, and that way it will be perfectly symmetrical. But in the end, it just needs to be a shape like this. Next, take the crepe paper you want to use for the petals and trace the pattern that you created onto it 6 times to create 6 petals. And then cut those out. So you should be left with this. So now just take one of those petals and we're just going to stretch it out in this lower area. This will give it a curved shape. You can stretch it out a little bit up higher also, but mostly keep it down towards the bottom. So just keep working with it until you're happy with the shape, and it always helps if you look at a picture of a tulip as you do this. So when you're happy with the shape, we can move on to attaching it to the wire. So I'm going to position it about here. So I'm just going to put some tacky glue on that lower area. And then press it in place. So it looks like this. Next, I'm going to take the next petal and I did the exact same thing, just stretching it out mostly in that lower area. And you'll want to overlap these quite a bit. Just imagine that you're placing 6 around the wire and decide how much you need to overlap each one to get them all spaced evenly. So I just glued it in place next to the other one, overlapping them quite a bit as you can see. And I'll repeat that with a third petal. Just stretching it out in that lower area and a little bit up higher. And overlapping it quite a bit once again. Adding some glue at the bottom and pressing it in place. So I'm just going to repeat this exact same process on the rest of the 3 remaining petals. Adding that last petal. So it looks like this at this point. So you can go through and just make some adjustments. If you want, you can add some tacky glue down here if you have gaps that open up at the bottom. So I'm just using a toothpick to place the glue kind of inside of each petal. And just make some adjustments until you like how it looks. So it ended up looking like this, and now it's time to add the floral tape. We're going to start it up very high on the flower, as high as you can go with it. And it works best if you stretch it as you wrap it. And then just keep doing this to wrap as far down as you'd like on the stem. And when you're done, just cut it and then just wrap it around and stick it in place. Next, take some green crepe paper and cut these long kind of triangular shapes. And again, definitely look at a picture of a tulip as you're doing this. And then I'm just cutting some off the bottom to make the end very narrow. So it looks like this, and then you'll want to create 2 of those. And now it's time to attach them. So just decide how far up you want it placed on the stem. And then put some tacky glue on that narrow area at the bottom. And then just wrap it around the stem. Then add the other piece. Putting some glue at the bottom. And then wrapping that around. Then we're going to use the floral tape again to wrap over this. And you just need to do this until all the paper is covered at the bottom. And then cut off the tape. And then this next step is really important for making the leaves look more realistic. Just go through and kind of stretch random areas so it starts to get its own shape and it will start to get some curves in it. And if you tear some off like I did there, that is okay, you can just fix it with some scissors. So just keep stretching areas until you're happy with how it looks. And if you want to change the shape at all, you can always trim off some of the paper. So once I was finished, the flower looked like this. And the last step is just going to be to trim off the extra wire at the bottom. So I went just below where I stopped the tape, and I used wire cutters to trim it off. And then you can take the tulips and then just stick them into the foam in the flower pot. And that's it! Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this crepe paper tulip tutorial. I will put on screen my playlist with all the crepe paper flowers that I've made on this channel. Feel free to subscribe to see future videos. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day.